The lawyer's office smelled like old books and betrayal. I sat stiffly in the chair, gripping the letter my father had written before he died, one I'd been told never to open until my 21st birthday. It read, "Your college fund will secure your future. I've left $750 million in your trust. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now." My hands shook as the lawyer typed into the estate database. Then he frowned. The account balance showed $0.00. Across the table, my mother, Whitney Hale, crossed her legs and smiled politely, as though this were a minor clerical issue. "Your father's trust was restructured," she said smoothly. "Everything is under my care now." My throat went dry. "What do you mean under your care?" "It was mine." Her tone never changed. "You weren't ready." When I demanded the transfer records, the lawyer hesitated before turning the screen toward me. Every cent, all $750 million, had been transferred into Whitney's personal account 2 months after Dad's funeral. I looked at her in disbelief. "You stole it?" She gave a small, cold smile. "Don't be dramatic, Alex. I saved it from you." That night, I returned to the mansion I'd grown up in, now Whitney's kingdom. Every family photo was gone. Only hers remained, perfectly framed, perfectly positioned. I crept into my father's old study. The drawers were empty, polished clean, except one. The bottom right was locked. When I leaned close, I heard something faintly metallic inside. I forced it open with a screwdriver, heart pounding. Inside, a single sealed envelope labeled, "For Alex, only if he asks the right question." Inside was a photograph. Whitney with a man I didn't recognize, standing in front of the Ridgefield Investment Bank. Dated 3 weeks before Dad's death. On the back, in my father's handwriting, it said, "Follow the money." My skin prickled. My father knew. He'd left me a breadcrumb trail. As I slipped the photo into my pocket, I caught a reflection in the window. Whitney, standing in the doorway behind me, smiling faintly, as if she'd been waiting for me to find it. She didn't say a word. Just watched me with those cold, calculating eyes. The next morning, I tracked down my father's old financial advisor, Mr. Lowell, retired and living in a tiny apartment outside town. When I showed him the photo, his face drained of color. "She told me it was temporary," he whispered. "Who?" I asked. "Whitney. She said it was to protect the assets. But that man with her, he wasn't from Ridgefield Bank." He slid an old folder across the table. Inside were copies of account transfers to a company called Alara Holdings. No address. No records. Just that name. Mr. Lowell's voice trembled. "Your father was investigating them before the accident." My chest tightened. "What accident?" He stared at the floor. "The one that killed him." He said Whitney was acting strange. My pulse raced. The more I learned, the less his accident made sense, and the more my mother looked like a liar. I left his apartment with the folder clutched tightly in my hands, my mind racing with possibilities. Every instinct told me I was stepping into something dangerous. Back in the house, I tore through the study again. This time, something rolled out from behind the desk, a small USB drive, covered in dust. I plugged it into my laptop. Hundreds of encrypted files appeared. Only one folder was open, labeled, "For Alex." Inside was a single video. My father sat in his study, staring directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, it means Whitney found the money. She'll try to control you, maybe worse. Don't trust her. Not even with your life." The video glitched and ended. I froze, every nerve screaming. Then, footsteps. I turned. Whitney stood in the doorway. "I told you not to dig, Alex," she said softly, her eyes colder than I'd ever seen. She reached behind her back and quietly turned the key in the lock. The room went still. Whitney stepped closer, her heels echoing on the floor. "You think your father was a saint?" she asked. "He wasn't. And if you keep chasing ghosts, you'll destroy yourself too." I demanded the truth, but she just smiled and walked out, leaving the door unlocked, as if daring me to follow. But I'd already noticed what she hadn't hidden well enough, a small flash drive tucked inside her purse. Later that night, I took it. Inside were unencrypted documents. Bank statements, offshore accounts, and one repeated name, Dr. Adrian Vale. A man connected to both her and Elara Holdings. Then I opened the last file. A scanned autopsy report labeled Martin Hale. My father's name. Cause of death listed as blunt force trauma to the head. Not an accident. My entire world tilted. Whitney hadn't just stolen the money. She'd buried the truth with my father. And now I knew she'd kill to keep it that way. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Whitney's calm face, the kind of calm that comes from control. At sunrise, I searched for Dr. Adrian Vale. No medical license, no academic trail, just one hit, a private clinic in New Orleans. A clinic my mother had visited twice in the past year. I booked the first flight immediately, not telling anyone where I was going. When I arrived, the building was nothing like a hospital. More like a converted mansion. The receptionist froze when I said Whitney's name. "She doesn't like visitors," she whispered, glancing nervously down the hall. Before I could ask more, a voice came from the staircase. "Alex Hale." A tall man descended slowly. White coat, perfect smile. "Your mother said you might come." My stomach turned. She already knew I was here. His smile widened. "Why don't we talk privately? Your father's death wasn't what you think." Inside his office, Dr. Vale poured 2 glasses of water. I didn't touch mine. He leaned back casually. "Your mother brought your father here once. A year before his death. He was unstable." "Unstable how?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "He accused her of poisoning him." My heart thudded. And was he wrong? He tilted his head, as if savoring the question. "That depends on who you ask." He opened a drawer, pulling out a patient file. My father's name was scrawled across the top. The final entry read, "Condition deteriorating rapidly. Cardiac arrest expected." "Expected," I whispered. "You knew he was going to die." Vale said nothing. When I reached for the file, he snapped it shut. "If I were you, I'd stop digging. Whitney doesn't forgive." That night, someone slipped an envelope under my hotel door. Inside was a photo of me entering the clinic, and a note. "You're next." I flew back home before sunrise. My hands trembled the entire flight. Whitney didn't call, which somehow terrified me more than if she had. At the house, her car was gone. I used the chance to search her office. Behind a false panel, I found something unexpected. A small safe deposit key with the initials MH, my father's. I drove to every bank in the city until one clerk recognized the number. She led me to a narrow vault, handed me the box. Inside were only 2 things. A leather journal, and a single business card that read, Elara Holdings, Private Division. I opened the journal. The first line stopped my breath. "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. Whitney's in deeper than she knows." The rest of the pages were missing, ripped out cleanly. When I turned to leave, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "Put the journal back." When I got home that night, Whitney was waiting in the dining room. The table was set for 2, candles flickering, a bottle of the wine my father used to love. "Sit," she said softly. "We need to talk." Every instinct screamed don't. But I sat. She poured the wine, eyes never leaving mine. "You've been traveling," she said casually. "You met Adrian Vale." I froze. She smiled. "He's loyal to me. Always has been." Then she slid an envelope across the table. "Your father left more than money behind. He left debts. I've cleaned them up. You should thank me." I opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of photographs. Me at the bank, me in the hotel, me talking to Mr. Lowell. Every move I'd made, she'd been watching. I stood to leave, but she whispered, "If you keep looking for the truth, Alex, I'll make sure you wish you hadn't found it." I woke to smoke. The air was thick, choking, coming from the study downstairs. By the time I reached it, the fire had consumed the desk. My father's journal, gone, blackened to ash. Whitney stood outside the house, robe wrapped tight around her, eyes calm. "Faulty wiring," she said. "You really should be more careful." I didn't believe her. Not for a second. When the fire department left, I searched the rubble. One page had survived, half burned but legible. "If Whitney's working with Vale, check the second account. Under her maiden name." I ran upstairs, opened my laptop, typed it in, and froze. There it was. A hidden account in Switzerland. Balance, $742 million. She hadn't spent it. She was moving it. And if I didn't stop her soon, she'd disappear with everything. I printed the account details, backed them up in 3 separate locations. I didn't sleep that night. The flames from the fire still flickered behind my eyelids. I could still smell the smoke on my clothes, the scent of secrets being erased. Whitney walked around the house as if nothing had happened. She hummed softly while making tea, as if she hadn't burned my father's last words into ash. When she slid the teacup toward me, I saw it. Her hand didn't shake. "Drink," she said. "You look tired." I didn't. I just stared at her and said, "How long have you been lying to me?" Her smile didn't falter. "Since the day you started asking the wrong questions." That night, when she went to bed, I poured the tea down the sink and saw the faint shimmer of crushed pills swirling away. At 2 in the morning, headlights flashed through the curtains. I crept to the window. A black sedan idled in the driveway, engine running, lights off. Someone sat inside. Watching. I turned off the lights, grabbed my phone, and started recording through the blinds. 5 minutes passed. Then the driver's door opened, and Dr. Vale stepped out. He opened the trunk and lifted a small metal case. When he looked up, I ducked behind the curtain. By the time I looked again, he was gone, but the front door was slightly open. I walked into the hall, heart hammering, and heard whispers coming from Whitney's study. 2 voices. Hers, and his. I pressed my ear to the door. Whitney's voice was sharp, controlled. "It has to be done cleanly. No traces." Vale replied, "He's your child, Whitney." Her silence chilled me more than her words. I held my breath as papers shuffled. "Once the transfer clears," she said, "Alex won't be a problem anymore." I stepped back too quickly. The floorboard creaked. Silence. Then Vale's voice. "Did you hear that?" I bolted down the hall, into my room, slammed the door, and locked it. Seconds later, soft knocks. "Alex?" Whitney's voice, sweet again. "You awake?" I didn't answer. I could hear her breathing through the door. Slow. Patient. Then footsteps retreating. I texted the only person I thought might still help me, my father's former attorney. But the reply made my blood run cold. "Do not contact me again. You're being watched." Morning came too slowly. Whitney acted normal again, making breakfast, commenting about the weather. But I noticed it. The faintest red dot blinking in the corner of the living room. A hidden camera. I found another one behind the bookshelf. Another in my room's smoke detector. He'd been recording everything. I ripped them out one by one, adrenaline burning through my veins. When she came downstairs, I was waiting, every device laid out on the table. You want to explain this? Her face didn't even twitch. I don't need to explain anything, she said. You live in my house. No, I said, voice shaking. I live in my father's house. Her eyes went dark, like a mask cracking. She leaned close enough for me to feel her breath. Then maybe you should ask yourself why your father left it all to me. I checked the will that night and found a second version. One I'd never seen before. Signed, sealed, and dated 2 days before he died. The signature wasn't his. I'd seen my father sign 1,000 contracts in his life. Bold, deliberate, always with a flourish at the end. This one was flat. Mechanical. Almost traced. I took a picture and ran a scan through an online forensic tool. The results came back. High probability of forgery. My chest tightened. She'd done it. She'd taken everything, the fund, the house, the name, built on a forged will. I sent the scan to a private investigator, attached the bank info I'd found. He called within minutes. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? Of course, I said. My mother. He paused. No, he said quietly. You're dealing with whoever she works for. The next morning, my car alarm went off. Every window smashed, the windshield shattered. And on the driver's seat, written in red marker, "Stop digging, Alex." The investigator, a quiet man named Hale, called again that night. He didn't waste time on greetings. Your mother's been moving funds offshore through shell companies. Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and a trust under your name. My name. He sent over the files. Detailed spreadsheets, transaction records, wire transfers dated months before my father's death. One caught my eye. $12.7 million transferred to an entity called Whitmore Holdings. Owner, Whitney Evans. She hadn't just taken my fund. She'd used it to build an empire of lies. Can you prove it's illegal? I asked. Hale sighed. Not yet. But someone on the inside might help us. Your father's former CFO vanished after the funeral. Find him, and you'll have your proof. The next morning, I received an unmarked envelope on my doorstep. Inside, a USB drive labeled Vault. I plugged it in, hands trembling. Folders. Dozens of them. Documents labeled Foundation, Fund Transfer, Witness Statements. And then, a hidden audio file named, Do Not Delete. My father's voice. If you're hearing this, it means the trust has been compromised. Whitney isn't who you think she is. Protect the fund, and trust no one from the board. Especially Vale. I froze. Vale. The family lawyer who told me to stop digging. I hit pause, the weight of his warning sinking in. Whitney hadn't just betrayed me. She betrayed my father while he was dying. I backed up the drive and hid it in the piano bench, just before I heard the door creak open and Whitney's voice echo through the hall. Alex, we need to talk about what you've been doing. She stepped into the room, eyes sharp but smiling. I know you've been speaking to people, she said softly. Lawyers, investigators, old family friends. My stomach twisted. She knew everything. She circled me slowly, like a predator who enjoyed the hunt. I built everything this family has, she said. Your father gave up long before he died. I did what was necessary. Necessary? I snapped. You stole my future. She tilted her head, almost amused. No, darling. I saved it. You just don't understand yet. Her calmness scared me more than her rage ever could. When she left the room, I saw it. The faint glint of a wire under her sleeve. She'd been recording me. That night, I called Hale. She's trying to make me look unstable. Probably building a case that I'm a danger to myself. She sighed. Classic inheritance control tactic. We need leverage, something public. So I did what he'd never expect. I invited him to dinner. I set up my own recording, one hidden camera in the bookshelf, one in the flower vase. I waited until the wine had softened her edges. Then I asked, "Did you ever love Dad?" He smiled faintly. Love? No. But I respected him. Until he thought you deserved to inherit what I built. Even if it meant faking his signature. Her glass froze halfway to his lips. He didn't answer, but the flicker of fear in his eyes was enough. Later that night, I checked the footage. The cameras were gone. Every file deleted. But one small red light blinked under the table. Her recorder. She'd confessed on her own device. With Hale's help, I tracked Vale's accounts. One of them led to a foundation in Zurich, the Whitmore Foundation for Educational Advancement. Except no students ever received a dime. The foundation was a front for Whitney's asset funneling. Real estate, offshore investments, luxury estates registered under fake trustees. We found a property listed in Marseille, a villa registered 2 weeks before my father's death. I booked a flight. At the villa, I met a caretaker who spoke little English but knew Whitney's face. He pointed to a study inside the house, where I found portraits, photos, and bank statements. But one picture froze me. My mother standing beside Vale, and another man I'd never seen before. The man's name was printed neatly under the frame. Dr. Adrian Kessler, my father's business rival. Hale called as I stared at the photo. "Alex, I just found something. Your father didn't steal the money alone. He's helping hide what really killed your father." The Marseille villa was silent except for the echo of my heartbeat. Behind the desk, I noticed a letter wedged between 2 books. Yellowed paper sealed with my father's insignia. I opened it carefully. "If this reaches you, then someone I trusted betrayed us. Whitney has been meeting with Kessler. They plan to transfer the fund and sell the patents I swore would go to you. Do not confront her without proof. Record everything. Protect yourself." My chest tightened. He knew. Outside, Hale called again, his voice tense. "Alex, get out. The villa's under surveillance. Someone tipped her off you were there." Through the window, headlights flared in the driveway. Whitney's black sedan. I grabbed the letter and the photo, ran through the back terrace, and disappeared into the vineyard as her car door slammed behind me. Back in the hotel, I scanned the documents into a secure drive and sent copies to Hale. I couldn't run forever. I needed one final play. Whitney called that night, calm, collected, as if nothing had happened. "You've embarrassed yourself enough, Alex. Come home. We'll talk this through like family." Family. The word stung like acid. I agreed. Not because I believed her, but because it was time. I returned home the next morning, wearing a wire Hale had given me. Whitney greeted me in silk and diamonds, as if she hadn't stolen the world from me. "Where's the letter?" she asked quietly. "What letter?" I said, watching his eyes harden. She smiled. "You're just like him. Always pretending to be smarter than everyone else." Hale texted me one word from the van outside. "Recording." He poured herself a drink and began pacing. "You want the truth? Fine. Your father was reckless. He trusted the wrong people. He trusted you. Do you know what that college fund really was?" I stayed silent. It was leverage. He was going to sell those patents to Kessler to pay his debts. I stopped him. I made sure the money wouldn't vanish. "You should be thanking me." "So you forged his will," I said quietly. She froze, glass trembling slightly. "I did what I had to. The board, Vale, Kessler, they all agreed. You'd ruin everything if you knew." The words spilled out faster, louder. Years of guilt disguised as justification. "You think I enjoyed it? Watching him die knowing the truth? Watching you cling to his promises?" I didn't say a word. The recorder caught every syllable. The moment she stopped, Hale and 2 officers walked in. "Whitney Evans, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice." The trial stretched for weeks. Her lawyers tried to frame me as an unstable heir, entitled, vindictive. But the audio file, the signed documents, and the letter destroyed everything they built. When my father's recording played, his voice echoing across the courtroom, the silence was unbearable. "If you're hearing this, Whitney has already betrayed our family. Protect our son. Protect his future." Whitney sat still, hands clasped, eyes empty. No more lies left to tell. Kessler pleaded guilty first, dragging Vale down with him. Offshore accounts were frozen. The $750 million fund was reinstated and transferred under a new trust, one Whitney could never touch again. On sentencing day, she turned to me and whispered, "You think you've won. But you'll always carry my blood. That's your curse." Months later, I returned to my father's grave. The air smelled of rain and lavender. I placed the recovered letter beside the stone and whispered, "It's over. I did what you couldn't." A calm I hadn't felt in years finally settled in. Justice didn't bring joy. It brought silence. But that silence was mine. I used part of the fund to start the Evans Foundation for Ethical Innovation. Scholarships, research, second chances. Exactly what he'd wanted. Then, one last envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside, a photograph of Whitney in a prison yard, smiling faintly, holding a chess piece. A queen. On the back, one sentence. "Your move, Alex." I laughed, not in fear, but in understanding. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was legacy. And I'd already won. I stood in my father's study, now truly mine, and looked at the empire he'd built. The company he'd protected, the patents he'd fought for, the future he'd secured. All of it was safe now. I opened my laptop and began writing. Not for revenge, not for closure, but for truth. Every detail of Whitney's manipulation, every lie she'd told, every life story she'd destroyed. I would make sure the world knew exactly who she was. The foundation's first scholarship went to a girl whose father had embezzled her college fund. Poetic justice, I thought. Every board meeting I attended, I thought of my father's voice on that recording. His warning, his protection, his love hidden in evidence and preparation. He'd known exactly what Whitney was capable of, and he'd given me the tools to fight back. The company flourished under new leadership. I appointed honest people, vetted carefully, chosen for integrity rather than connections. Everything my father had wanted, everything Whitney had tried to destroy. Sometimes I'd walk past the dining room where he'd served me poisoned tea, and I'd smile. Not because I was cruel, but because I'd survived. I'd won. I'd protected everything he'd built. The Swiss account was emptied, funds distributed according to my father's original will. Charities, foundations, research programs. Money used for good instead of greed. Vale lost his medical license permanently. Kessler's business empire collapsed. Everyone who'd helped Whitney destroy my father faced consequences. Real, lasting, permanent consequences. I learned that justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, methodical, inevitable. Like water wearing away stone, truth eventually erodes even the strongest lies. 1 year after Whitney's conviction, I received a letter from her. I almost threw it away unread, but curiosity won. Inside, just 3 words. I'm sorry, Alex. I burned it without responding. Some apologies come too late. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some wounds need to stay closed. The foundation grew. Hundreds of students received scholarships. Dozens of patents were protected. My father's legacy lived on, stronger than Whitney's greed, more powerful than her manipulation. I met with Mr. Lowell one last time. He was dying, cancer eating away at him, but his eyes were clear. Your father would be proud, he said. You did what he couldn't. You stopped her. He stopped her, I replied. He left me everything I needed. The evidence, the warnings, the tools. I just followed his instructions. Mr. Lowell smiled. He knew you would. He always said you were stronger than you realized. Those words stayed with me. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, about fighting even when you're scared, about protecting what matters no matter the cost. I expanded the company into new territories. Ethical investments, sustainable development, innovation with integrity. Everything Whitney had corrupted, I purified. Everything she'd twisted, I straightened. Sometimes people asked if I hated her. I didn't. Hate requires energy, emotion, continued investment. She didn't deserve any of that. She was simply removed from my life, a cancer excised, a threat neutralized. The house became mine completely. I removed every trace of her existence. Repainted walls, replaced furniture, erased her presence like she tried to erase my father's legacy. I created a scholarship in my father's name specifically for students whose parents had betrayed them financially. Dozens applied every year. Each one received not just money, but mentorship, legal support, therapy resources. Breaking generational cycles of manipulation became my mission. Helping others escape what I'd barely survived became my purpose. The Swiss account investigation revealed Whitney had planned to disappear completely. Fake passport, new identity, permanent vanishing act. She'd almost succeeded. Almost. But my father's preparation, combined with my determination, had stopped her. Together, even with death between us, we'd won. 5 years after everything ended, I stood in the Foundation's new headquarters. State-of-the-art facility, hundreds of employees, thousands of lives changed. A young woman approached me nervously. Scholarship recipient, first-generation college student, brilliant future ahead. Thank you, she whispered. My father tried to steal my college fund too. Your foundation saved me. I hugged her tightly. You saved yourself. We just gave you tools. She smiled through tears. That's what my father would have said. That night, alone in my office, I opened the locked drawer where I kept my father's original letter. The one that started everything. Your college fund will secure your future. He'd been right. Not the money itself, but the fight to reclaim it, the strength to stand up to Whitney, the courage to demand truth. That secured my future. I wrote my own letter then. Sealed it, locked it away. Instructions for whoever came after me. Trust is earned, not inherited. Verify everything. Protect what matters. And never let anyone steal your future. Outside my window, the city lights sparkled. Somewhere out there, Whitney sat in a prison cell, playing chess alone, plotting moves in a game already finished. And I sat in my father's chair, in our company, protecting our legacy, living the future he'd died securing. Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you protect. What you build. What you pass forward. My father taught me that. Whitney tried to steal it. But in the end, truth always wins. And I'd made sure of it. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.